Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. We're going to do a quick review of the current status of the U.S. Senate races in 2020. There were some polls released over the last week or so showing a couple of seats, specifically Iowa and Georgia, to be very interesting at this point in the campaign. And when control of the Senate is this close, changes to even just one or two seats can be impactful. And there isn't a whole lot of good news for Republicans. The map you see includes the general consensus of which seats are safe for either party. The odds of them changing are somewhere between slim and none, and it would take some serious movement in the polls to even drop them from safe to likely, let alone to leans. A couple of the unhighlighted states are ones I would personally classify as safe because of polling or voting history. But for one reason or another, pundits want to consider them less than safe, so that is where we will start. First up is Mississippi, one of the brightest red states of all. Democratic leaders in the South have always touted their hope that Mississippi will finally turn blue, thanks to having the highest population percentage of African Americans of all 50 states. Unfortunately for them, the rest of the state is overwhelmingly red, giving them little to no chance of winning in the state for the foreseeable future. There have been 3 polls this year, and all 3 show current incumbent Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith out front of her Democratic rival Mike Espy. These two battled it out a couple of years ago in a special election, and Smith beat Espy by 7 points for a 2-year term. Now going for a full 6 years, the most recent poll shows her up by 9 points, just shy of a majority at 49%. She polled over 50% earlier in the year, and with President Trump's high support in the state, it's very unlikely Espy can make up the ground. This one I would rate as safely Republican. Next up is Alaska, another traditionally red state. While Democrats did hold a seat as recently as the 2014 election, that seat was a result of scandal, and the next cycle they lost it to current incumbent Dan Sullivan. While he squeaked to a 6,000 vote victory, it was an off-year election. There have been no polls in Alaska this year, but I believe I can safely put it in the GOP column in a presidential election year. Alaska is safe. Now Alabama. Like Alaska, it took a scandal for incumbent Democratic Senator Doug Jones to win his seat 2 years ago in a special election over scandal-ridden Republican nominee and rabid Trump supporter Roy Moore. This year, Jones was not so lucky, and Moore didn't make the final runoff. Instead, Jeff Sessions, still stinging from his almost weekly rebuking by the president for his time as Attorney General, is running behind first-time campaigner and even more rabid Trump supporter Tommy Tuberville. Tuberville is well known in Alabama thanks to his time as the head football coach at Auburn University. Polls currently show Tuberville winning the nomination. Alabama is deep red, and a poll in February showed Jones behind by 8. Another poll was released showing the gap had narrowed to 4 points, but I'm not buying it because the poll was commissioned by none other than Doug Jones' campaign. When your poll, which tends to be rosier than others, show you still trailing by someone who hasn't even been nominated yet, you're in trouble. Tuberville will win the nomination and the seat. Safe GOP. We move to South Carolina, which any other year wouldn't even be in the discussion. What changed is South Carolina does have a sizable African American population, which, should Joe Biden choose a woman of color as his running mate, could be energized to turn out. Will he win the state? No, there's no chance of that. But it could put current Senator Lindsey Graham in danger. Seeming to back up Graham's endangered status, the most recent Civics poll listed the race as a tie. Graham is a very unpopular politician in his home state, and even many Republicans would like to see him go, as evidenced by the 10-point divide between President Trump's numbers and Graham's. That said, this was the first poll to show Democratic challenger Jamie Harrison higher than 30%. In spite of Civics being a pretty reliable pollster, I'll need to see more than just one poll to consider this even a competitive race in a presidential year. So for the time being, I will rate this as likely Republican, pending further polling. Virginia has had no polling whatsoever, which might seem surprising when you realize incumbent Senator Mark Warner only won by 1% in 2014. But 2014 was an off-year election. This is a presidential election year. Virginia has gone Democrat the last 3 presidential elections, and the Democratic domination on the state level has made national headlines the last couple of years. Warner's approval rating is only 49%, which appears pretty middling, but in an age when 52% will get you listed on Morning Consult's popularity list as a top 10 senator, that ain't too bad. Republicans don't have a good bench, and that's telling since all three running for the honor are complete unknowns. Eventually they'll know after counting the ballots from Tuesday's primary who's going to go head-to-head with Warner. There have been no polls, though, because Warner is going to win in a walk. Likely Democrat until someone gets around to polling the race. Another state with no polling is New Hampshire, where Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen is popular. Many pundits want to keep this in the toss-up column because of it being so close in the 2016 presidential election. But without polling, well, that's telling all in itself. She's popular, Republicans don't have a deep bench, and haven't even picked anyone yet. Plus, Joe Biden is likely to win the state. So, likely Democrat until we get some polls saying otherwise. Arizona used to be reliably red. Only Bill Clinton running for re-election in 1996 won the state for the Democrats since Harry Truman in 1948. But the times, they are a-changin'. Polls show Biden ahead of Trump. An election in 2018 saw a Democrat elected to the Senate, and the loser of that race was given the late John McCain's seat after his death. Martha McSally is now running for a full term and is getting demolished in polls by Democratic candidate and former astronaut Mark Kelly. While it's still considered a swing state for this race, I have no idea. There have been 13 polls in 2020. Kelly has led in every single one of them, polling in the low 50s since April. For now, Kelly in a walk. Likely Democrat, but with a safe rating on the horizon if this double-digit lead holds. Michigan is another state whose polling does not seem to match its swing state status. Biden is way ahead in polls, and incumbent Senator Gary Peters had led in all 10 polls done this year over up-and-coming GOP candidate John James. Peters has been inching closer to 50% all year. Like Arizona, likely Democrat for now, but not for long if this keeps up. Kansas shouldn't be here. It just shouldn't. It's been a deep red state for so long, and a Civics presidential poll 3 weeks ago shows Trump with a 12-point lead. So what's up with the Senate? 3 things. Chris Kobach, Chris Kobach, Chris Kobach. Arguably the most disliked politician in the state, Kobach lost an easily winnable governorship by being Chris Kobach. A hardline Trump supporter on several conservative issues, but especially immigration, many of his stances were a bridge too far even for Ruby Red Kansas, leading to their current Democratic governor. Now he's in a primary fight with Roger Marshall for the nomination, which won't be decided until August, not leaving much time for the general election. Democrats also need to choose a candidate, but everyone expects that to be Dr. Barbara Boyer, a former Republican. Polling shows a tight race with either GOP candidate, but they show Boyer winning against Kobach more than with Marshall. Polls in May show Marshall with the edge and would likely win, but if Kobach pulls it out, all bets are off. Likely Republican because of Marshall's lead and Kobach having a shot, but not guarantee at winning. Maine Democrats have been chomping at the bit for this race for a while. After years of being frustrated by her cemented status as the female version of John McCain, Republican incumbent Senator Susan Collins infuriated many by voting to confirm Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court, even after expressing quote-unquote reservations, a tactic she also kept for the Senate impeachment trial against President Trump. It seems residents of Maine have long memories because all 3 polls done this year show her trailing Speaker of the Maine House of Representatives, Democrat Sarah Gideon. Gideon's lead has increased as the year has gone on, as she has slowly closed in on 50%. The race was long expected to be close, but Collins' resiliency is well known. Leans Democrat while awaiting more polling. Montana hasn't voted for a Democrat for president since Bill Clinton. Not a lot of polling has been done, but what has shows Trump with a much smaller than expected lead of 5 points. That bodes well for popular former Democratic Governor Steve Bullock. Early polls showed him deadlocked with current Senator Steve Daines, but a recent poll had Bullock out to a 7-point lead. This one will be close, and technically Daines has yet to have the lead in a poll yet, but the president does still have the lead. If he wins the state, which I expect to happen, he might have the coattails to bring Daines along with him. Leans Republican. Georgia has the rare pleasure of both seats being on the ballot this year, both currently in Republican hands. This is incumbent Senator David Perdue's normal election year, but the other seat, currently held by appointed Senator Kelly Loeffler, is in a special election to finish the remaining 2 years of the seat she was given when then-Senator Johnny Isakson retired for health reasons. Her pick was highly controversial at the time as President Trump supported Representative Doug Collins. Loeffler was favored until a stock scandal threatened to derail her campaign, and she fell behind Collins and in some cases even behind one of the two Democrats. Democrats have two candidates in this race, Matt Lieberman and Raphael Warnock, but both are polling in the low to mid-teens, so it doesn't seem like they're going to have much of an impact. Current polling shows Collins ahead, but since Georgia law requires this type of election be a so-called nonpartisan jungle primary, it is likely that no one will get 50%. If that's the case, there will be a runoff to decide who gets the seat, with Collins about the only guaranteed name on a runoff ballot. The Republicans will coalesce around either and will be the favorite to win. Likely Republican, even if there's a runoff. With Perdue's seat, things just got very interesting. The Democrats nominated Jon Ossoff, and in a surprise, the first poll showed Ossoff ahead with 1%. Well within the margin of error, but Ossoff performed well enough in a losing effort for a special election seat back in 2017, leading the jungle primary with 48% of the vote, but lost the runoff by 3 points. While Perdue has to be considered the favorite, if future polls continue to show this as competitive, a strong performance by Biden in the state could bring Ossoff in with him, but more polling is needed to before this gets downgraded, likely Republican. North Carolina has been in the news a lot of late, thanks to the moving of the National Republican Convention to officially nominate President Trump from there to Florida. Sticking to his guns about mask requirements, Democratic Governor Roy Cooper, who is in a tight race this election of his own, saw Trump pull out of holding the convention there, moving it to Jacksonville. Republican Senator Thom Tillis has watched his poll numbers vacillate this year, but found himself mostly running behind Democratic candidate Cal Cunningham. Cunningham has a very impressive resume. The former state senator is an Army veteran of the Afghan and Iraq wars and maintains his Army Reserve status as a lieutenant colonel. Tillis, who only won his seat by 2 points back in 2014, has been in Democratic sights since, and after being booed at a Trump rally last year, his support amongst Republicans also seems to be on thin ice. The most intriguing Senate race as of right now has got to be in Iowa. Until late last year, incumbent Republican Senator Joni Ernst was expected to easily win in a state President Trump won in 2016 by over 9 points. But the fortunes of both have come crashing down in 2020. Ernst's popularity in the state has taken a hit, going underwater for the first time late last year. Her only lead was the first poll done the end of April, but has seen Democratic challenger Teresa Greenfield take a small but consistent lead since. To make matters worse for Ernst, the most recent poll is from the guru of Iowa polling, Ann Selzer, who was crowned the best pollster in politics by 538's Nate Silver. Her poll for the Des Moines Register set off alarms with Republican consultants everywhere, as it confirmed previous polls showing Greenfield with the lead and Trump's lead having plummeted to only 1% over Joe Biden. Democrats also found success in the 2018 midterms by flipping not one, but 2 House seats. While the race is close, a month of trailing in the polls has to be concluded that Greenfield has a very small lead at the moment. This is technically a toss-up, but if I have to be nailed down, I'll give Greenfield the edge, as she and Biden seem to be carrying some momentum. As you can see, that brings our totals to 50 for Democrats and 50 for Republicans. What that means is if Donald Trump wins re-election, Republicans keep control of the Senate. If Joe Biden wins, the Democrats take control, because the tie-breaking vote is always the President of the Senate. And the President of the Senate is none other than the Vice President.